What's a world without words? What is language? My definition of language is that it is a way of communication. It can be used in different forms such as verbal and nonverbal, and language always can be flexible. For example, having a to-do list for the day, you could start off by doing your laundry and ending the list by doing the dishes. Or you could flip-flop your list and start by doing the dishes and end by doing your laundry. You can interpret the list how you want and do it in any type of order. A stop sign or a no turn on red sign is not an example of language because there is only one set meaning to those words. You must stop at a stop sign and you are not allowed to turn on a no turn on red sign, and there is no other way around it without breaking the law. I can relate in great detail with classroom language. After school, I am a pre-K teacher at KinderCare, and every day I use the simple phrases such as, "We won't start until everyone is quiet," and "Good morning, everybody," in my classroom daily. Having a loud tone of voice, but still sweet and simple, helps the students to understand you better and to listen to your directions in the classroom. Language development. The first stage of first language development is the pre-linguistic stage. This is the period of time when children say meaningless words or sounds like goo goo gaga, or when they babble and make bubbles with their mouth. I like to think of this time as the babbling stage. The next stage is the one-word stage. This stage is where the first real words happen in a child's life. Babies begin to display their emotions better and give short, one-word answers like yes or no to questions that you may ask them. For example, you could use a question as, "Are you hungry?" and the baby would just reply yes if they are hungry or no if they aren't hungry. The next stage in first language development is the two-word stage. This stage is where very, very short sentences begin. They're more like phrases than sentences, where the child could say, "I swing," when wanting to go on the swing set, or "Mommy push," when they want pushed on the swing. The telegraphic stage begins happening around 2 years of age. This is when multiple words are used to form sentences. An example of this would be, "Take me to the shop." The last stage in first language development is the fine-tuning stage. This stage occurs between the ages of 5 to 10 years old. Children will begin to use complete sentences, and they will have an expanded vocabulary from life at home and from being in school, and they will begin to use proper grammar when speaking orally or forming written sentences. The first stage of second language development is the silent period. The silent period can last from days to up until a year, and it can always depend on how comfortable the language learner is in their environment. If this language learner has parents at home that are speaking in English, they may leave the silent period a little earlier in the classroom because they hear this language more than just at school. If they are using their native language only at home, the children may be more prone to stay in the silent period longer at school because that's the only place they're learning the language, and they may feel a little uncomfortable in the classroom. The second stage is the early production stage. During this stage, the language learner can learn up to 1,000 words and begin speaking in sentences even if they are grammatically incorrect. During the speech emergent stage, the learners can have a vocabulary of up to 3,000 new words, and they will begin to gain comprehension of written and oral in the second language. A lot of learners have a background of speaking, so they can skip the silent period in early production and be in the speech emergent stage, like my baby for my EDU class. The intermediate fluency can last up to a year. And this is where the learners begin using more complex vocabulary in their sentences, and they begin to have less grammatic mistakes than when they were in the speech emergent stage. The final stage is the advanced fluency stage. This can take learners up to 2 to 5 years to learn and up to 10 years to master this skill. This is where the learners barely have error in their speaking and their writing, and they are comfortable in all aspects of their second language. You can be fluent while you're communicating with just your peers in a social setting, but when it comes time to be formal for a presentation, you may have grammatical errors. But once you reach this final advanced fluency stage, you should be able to be comfortable in all of those aspects and be able to speak in front of everyone with very little errors. A few differences between first and second language are that first language development, there is a babbling stage. When you first learn a first language, you are a baby. And during this, you physically cannot speak yet, so naturally you learn to babble. When you're learning your second language, you already have the background of word sounds and word meanings and how to form language, so you aren't going to start off at 10 years old remaking babbling noises because you already have the background. Another difference of first and second language is that you acquire your first language. You don't have a say on what language you get to learn. You begin learning it at home, and it is what comes naturally to you once you begin hearing it at home. Both first and second language learning both have set stages. Even though the stages are different, both learning a first and second language, you go through the stages. And both, also another similarity in learning a first and second language is that you will never 100% master the skills of the language. You are always learning and expanding your vocabulary every day. The silent period. To me, the silent period is when the learner is lost, they could be confused, or they could even be too scared to start learning their new language. I feel that this would happen more in the school setting than just in an at-home setting, because if you're at school and you're trying to learn English and everybody around you is speaking in English, nobody knows your second or your home language, and you're the only one that isn't able to communicate all of your thoughts with your classroom, you would begin to feel overwhelmed and very lost in the classroom, and it may make you become silent because you don't understand. They also may be in the silent period because they don't know how to ask for help. And at a young age, other children may make fun of them for not having the proper grammar or the skills to speak in complete sentences in the classroom. Bilingualism. I would define bilingualism as being able to communicate formally and casually in more than one language. Being bilingual can increase cognitive skills, improve ability to multitask, and help to learn and excel in English by already having a background in language, word sounds, and sentence structure. Teaching ELL students. I do not believe that the teacher in the classroom should be required to be bilingual to teach ELL students. I do feel, however, that the teacher should have to take classes on how to teach ELL students so that those students have a fair opportunity and are given the best chance to learn their new language. My human language theory, I chose the developmental learning theory. After reading through the different theories, I saw facts in each one that I did agree with, And it's not that any of these theories I think are bad, but I personally relate to this one and like it the most because of the stages in it, and it reminds me of psychology. So I agree with this because not every person is going to develop at the same rate and pace as everyone around them. They can't be put on a scaled set period and have the expectations that every person is going to meet the requirements. And forcing students to keep up with those set guidelines might end up making them overwhelmed and would cause them to struggle in the classroom. So lastly, I'm going to cover learning versus acquisition. In learning, I believe that you are conscious and that there is usually a very structured way. You learn your vocabulary words by doing this. You learn your spelling words by practicing them. There are different styles of learning, and there are different techniques to teach learning. In acquisition, you can be subconscious and not realize that you are obtaining knowledge. As an example. And this could be an example as on how to tie your shoes.